This is From Worry to Wealth, the podcast that shatters the myths and mystique surrounding wealth creation. As students, our schools and universities often neglect the crucial education on the core financial principles. I'm Ben Lyons. I'm a business owner, investor, entrepreneur, and author, and I'm joined by my business partner, Fink. And together, we're here to inspire your journey towards improving your financial self. In a world buzzing with advice on the behaviors and mindset to become wealthy, we'll share proven processes tried and tested by our network of successful collaborators. So get ready to move past worry and move towards wealth and your improved financial self. Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Lyons, your co-host of From Worry to Wealth podcast. I'm really excited to be with you today. We have a tremendous guest with us. But first, let me introduce my co-host of this podcast, Fink.
Good day, everybody. Happy to be here. Happy to be speaking with Paul today.
And has anyone ever noticed that Alex has that black hat on again?
Is it black all the time?
I don't know.
Got a couple different colors.
Yeah. You know,
look, the more of myself I can hide, the better it comes off on film.
I see. You actually don't have a bad head of hair, so you're covering it up, but that's okay. But that. I know you're all not here to listen to us talk about Alex's hair.
Definitely not.
So without further ado, I'd love to introduce to you a dear friend for a long time, actually since I was 19, Alex.
Yeah, you've mentioned that, which is amazing.
And you're going to be in for a treat. He's got a tremendous legal background. I'm going to let him share his story. He's got tremendous stories. His name is Paul Bekman. So, Paul, welcome to our podcast.
Welcome, Paul.
Thank you both. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so, Paul, just for our viewers or listeners, you and I go back. I was telling Alex that I met you when I was 19. I was introduced.
I have a very important question for Paul. Paul, did Ben have a mustache when you met him?
I had a mustache for a very short period of time.
Okay.
But you are correct.
I just wanted a clarification on that. Thank you, Ben.
That was a long time ago. How do we even remember that?
Well, Paul remembers it, and obviously it made an impression.
But, Paul, that was 41 years ago. Can you believe that?
Time flies, Ben, as you know, as we live and enjoy our lives.
Yeah. And Paul is probably one of the most positive human beings I've ever met.
Were you introduced to Paul, or how did you guys meet?
I was introduced to Paul by an associate. Paul was kind enough to make an investment. You know, Paul's been an investor for the most part. Would that be a correct description, Paul, that you've been an investor with me and with projects over the years?
Oh, absolutely. Probably close to 40 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Paul, you know, the Worry to Wealth podcast is centered around the book From Worry to Wealth, and we talk about wealth creation. And, you know, you're, to me, the epitome of success. And what I want to cover on this podcast is your background and your story, and allow viewers and listeners to understand how you got where you are today. But first, let's talk about your successes. I only know a little bit, you know, but you've been the president of the Maryland Bar. But why don't you share some of the, highlights, and then we're going to go all the way back to when you got started, even as a child growing up. But you got the Icon Award in Baltimore. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, there actually were 3 different awards that were given over a period of several years. The first was recognized by the Daily Record, which is the legal newspaper here in Maryland. And I was nominated and became a individual who received an award for recognition for contribution to the legal profession. And then I got a Lifetime Leadership Award for the work that I had done as a lawyer in 2023. And then finally, you mentioned the Icon Award, which is given to business leaders, judges, and lawyers who have contributed substantially to the success of Baltimore and its environs. And that's where I have been done most of my practice, although I have tried cases outside of Maryland, which I will be glad to talk about. But it's a very, very fine recognition, and I'm very proud of it. It's something that, if you work hard, as I've said to you many times, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And that's been my theme for the entire time that I have been a lawyer. You mentioned, starting out, and I think it might be helpful for some of the people who are watching this to know a little bit about my background. How did this guy become a lawyer and a successful lawyer and a leader of the bar in this state? So I'm going to take you back. I'm going to take you back to the time that I was 12 years old. I lived in Washington, D.C. My father worked for the government. My mother worked as a secretary. My sister was 6 years older than me and was going to go to college. And my father came home from work and said, "We're going to Korea." This was 1958. That's 5 years after the Korean War. And he was the director of communications for the U.S. aid mission to Korea. And yes, we flew out of Baltimore Washington Airport, which was called then Friendship Airport, to San Francisco, spent the night there, flew to Hawaii, spent a night or two there in Honolulu, then flew to Tokyo, and then on to Seoul. And we ended up living, as they say, on the economy in Seoul in a place called Itaewon, which is now unrecognizable from what it was in 1958. But it was a place where there were a lot of homes and a lot of different people lived there. And we lived there for a year. And then 3 years, we lived on an army post. U.S. Army, 8th Army was there. We were 30 miles from the border to North Korea. I've been there a couple of times, and it's quite an experience to do that. But I went to school there. My first year when I was there, I went to a Presbyterian missionary school. And then for 3 years, I went to a high school in Korea up to the 10th grade. And then we left Korea, and this was the story that kind of started me off. Having lived on an army post for 3 years, and being exposed to the U.S. Army, what they did, I decided that I wanted to go to one of the service academies, West Point, Annapolis Air Force Academy. But I didn't know any congressmen. I didn't know any senators. They were the ones who typically would recommend individuals for appointment to the various academies. But I found out in that process that you could also get into one of the academies if you competed nationally in a term, to be appointed from an honor military school. So my family had, been born in New York, and my grandfather had a bungalow colony in the Catskills. So I checked out a lot of the places, and I ended up going to a place called New York Military Academy. Now, for many of you, that may ring a bell. Where have I heard that name, New York Military Academy? Well, it was an academy that had been in existence for over 70 years. There were a lot of honor military schools at that time. There were a total of about 400 in the country. Now, I don't think there are 10. But at that time, it was the way to go if you wanted to compete. And I spent my junior and senior year at New York Military Academy. And one of the things that had occurred when I went there that I'm sure when I mention this will bring smiles and maybe not so many smiles to people is who my classmate was. We had 94 kids in my class. They were all males at that time. And my classmate was none other than Donald J. Trump. And I knew him well. We were both on the football team together. I was captain of the golf team. He was captain of the baseball team. We both were on the football team together, and I knew him very well. And time, um, as you can imagine, it was a very competitive environment, particularly with 94 kids. So I was a good student. I worked hard, and I graduated first in the class. And at the end of the year for graduation, I was voted most likely to succeed.
Paul, how do you get it? How do you get admitted to that school? Do you have to apply? Is there a
I
selection
had to
process?
apply. They had to look at your record, and I had a very good record while I was overseas. I was a very good student. And you may want to ask yourself, well, if you were most likely to succeed, and Donald Trump was president 2 times, what was he? What recognition did he have?
Exactly. Yes, that's a great
And the
question.
recognition that he has was he was voted ladies' man. And in the yearbook,
And you
there's a
and you
big
see which one
picture of
proved out
me
better.
picture of me sitting behind the superintendent's desk as an 18-year-old looking like a lawyer. And as a result, I went on to and got appointed to the Air Force Academy and in Colorado Springs. And I was there for 3 years and decided, having taken an introduction to the law course, that's what I wanted to do. So I came back and I did my last year at the University of Maryland in College Park, and then got into Maryland Law School, which was a 3-year program, and graduated in 1971. But after my first year in law school, I ended up applying for a clerkship in a law firm. I got the job, and it was what I'll call a general practice firm, but they represent the Seafarers International Union and the National Maritime Union, which were the two unions that supplied seamen for merchant vessels and other vessels, cruise vessels. And I ended up, when I was there for the 2 years that I was a law clerk, working with the lawyers, because we would have 3 or 4 or 5 cases a week of seamen, longshoremen, harbor workers being injured on the job, and they would have claims which they could file a lawsuit against their employer. Ordinarily, if someone's injured on the job working ashore, can't sue your employer for negligence. But you can if you were a longshoreman or harbor worker and they were negligent, causing an injury to you. So I ended up working up these cases for the 2 years that I was a law clerk. And then I took the bar in the summer of 71, got the results in November, and I passed. And then they wanted me to stay on. And I had a desire to continue to do that work. So here's what happened. I was not a lawyer for 2 months when they said to me, Paul, we want you to take these 2 cases and we want you to try them before a judge and a jury. They were auto cases. And you're going to do it yourself. You're going to work it up yourself. You're going to try it yourself. And we believe that that's going to be the best experience you have to see if you've got what it takes to be a good lawyer. And listen, Paul, don't worry about it. These are 2 losers, but we want you to get the experience. So I took them, and I won them both. And when that happened, and as Ben and I have talked about many times, and what I just mentioned earlier, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I tried both of those cases, and I won nice verdicts in both of those cases, and I was hooked. I was going to be a trial lawyer. and not someone who sits in their office and advertises on TV or on the radio or on billboards. I developed my reputation as a trial lawyer by my results and getting involved. One of the people that was in my firm, and there were several just terrific lawyers, said to me, Paul, listen, it's important for you to get known, for you to get involved in the bar. And as it turned out, at the time, I got involved first in the young lawyers section, which involved lawyers who basically were in their 20s and 30s. And I worked as a chair on several committees, and I ended up being the chairman of the young lawyers section, and established one of the first schools for kids in Baltimore, where a lot of parents, both people that were working and they needed a place to their kids go during the day, daycare, and it was a daycare center. And we actually got an award from the American Bar Association for setting up that program. So I also got involved in what's called the Maryland Trial Lawyers Association. That was plaintiff's bar. The defense had a bar as well, but I was trying plaintiff cases where people were injured. Automobiles, trains, planes, boats, airplanes, all of those kinds of cases I began to handle. So when I ended up getting involved in the bar, I worked my way up. I got up on the board of governors of the Maryland Trial Lawyers Association, and ultimately became president. It's a one-year term in the 1980s. And at the same time, I was involved in the Maryland State Bar, and I worked my way up there to the Board of Governors, became president of the Maryland State Bar. At the time that I was president of the Maryland State Bar, there were about 23,000 lawyers in Maryland. Now, I think there are over 40,000. And it was a good experience. You get to know a lot of people. We did a lot of very good projects that were helpful to the bar, helpful to lawyers, helpful to the citizens of Maryland. So that was kind of my story. Young lawyers, Maryland State Bar, Maryland Trial Lawyers Association, president of all of those organizations. But also along the way, because I was hooked on being the trial lawyer, I became the first lawyer in Maryland who was certified by the National Board of Trial Advocacy. And I ended up having to take a test, went down to Georgetown Law School, take a 5-hour test, and I was the first and only person from Maryland, this goes back to 1980, who was certified by the National Board of Trial Advocacy. I'm still a member as of today. And also, from that, I began to become involved in other trial organizations, the American Board of Trial Advocates. But perhaps the most prestigious place that I could possibly be is to become what's called a fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers. This is a national organization. Every state is involved. You cannot apply. You have to be nominated, and then you have to be approved by the state committee and the board of regents, and then you become a member, which I became a member in 1993. But I didn't stop there. I became on the state committee, then I became chair of the state committee, and then I became on the board of regents, and then I became secretary of the organization. And it's probably, without a question, the most prestigious organization that a lawyer could ever be recognized by, because you just can't pick it. They have to pick you. And that was a great honor for me. And in addition, I was involved in what's called the American Board of Trial Advocates, which is a national organization, put on a whole bunch of programs on how to try a jury trial, and I participated in that. And I was chairman of the American, and then you have the other organizations. I'm just going to mention a couple of them. And that is Best Lawyers in America. This is another one of the entities that you cannot apply to. You have to be recommended, and there's a panel of lawyers, and it's every state, and it's every kind of case that you might have in your state. So I have been recognized since 1989 when they first started Best Lawyers. And I've been recognized for personal injury, products liability, admiralty, commercial litigation, and products liability, and also dealing with general cases of litigation.
Paul, let me ask you, your parents, what did they do for a living?
So that's a very good question. When I went to New York Military Academy, my parents ended up going to Laos. And my father had a similar job that he had with the State Department in Laos for 2 years. So when I got out and I then went to the Air Force Academy, they ended up going to Nicaragua. And when they were in Nicaragua, there was a big upset in the president, and they came back from Maryland because the president was removed. And then they came back to Washington. And then my father went back to work at the government in D.C. Unfortunately, he died at a young age. He was 61, and he had an operation, and he ended up developing a serious reaction to what happened. He passed away when he was 61, and my mother lived till she was 78, Washington. But they were wonderful, wonderful people. Always had their kids at the forefront of their thoughts, their life.
So you were a teenager when your dad passed?
He passed away in 1972. So I was 26.
Okay, 26.
And I had been a lawyer for 6 months.
Wow. Would you say you grew up middle class?
I'm sorry?
Would you say you grew up middle class?
Yes, absolutely. Middle class.
Yeah, and your dad, it sounds like your dad was working
He
at
was
the State
he
Department.
worked for the government. She was
Yeah.
the secretary, no question about it.
Yeah, so when you guys went to Korea, that was because of his deployment from the the Department of
Correct.
State? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were
Because the U.S. had
advocates
an aid mission, Alex, to
Yeah.
Korea. It was a sorry place. And I didn't get back there until maybe 50 years after that. I had been there. And it was unrecognizable.
wow.
The Korean people were the hardest workers you could ever imagine. And when I was there, there was a river that crossed right through Seoul called the Yongsan River, the Han River. And there was one bridge. When I went back, there were 23 bridges, just as an idea. When I was there were virtually 0 cars manufactured in Korea. 0. They used tin cans to put a car together. And now we know a whole bunch of different, car makers come from Korea, and they do a good job. They are hard workers. And it was a terrific experience for me, and to see that and to see the way that they have grown. Being here in the States, the way things are, it's a whole different ballgame. And we live in a very, very competitive environment. And then I met Ben and have been fortunate enough to be involved in investments with him. And we've gone through quite a experience during that time. But he's always been as honest as you could ever be, a straight shooter. And that's why, I even come back to him in the present.
I
But
appreciate
I know
that.
you're talking about wealth. And one of the things is the life of a lawyer a life that can produce substantial wealth? And the answer to that is yes, but you've got to work hard. There are thousands and thousands of lawyers. There is competition, very, very strong. What I do in today's world, I'm still actively practicing, no end in sight, is I am involved in
That's amazing.
the handling of serious personal injury and wrongful death cases. A lot of them are medical malpractice, product liability, defective products, serious auto, train, plane incidents. So if you look at that and that type of work, and you are successful at obtaining the cases which you can evaluate as being serious, and also the kind of cases where you can help the people that were injured or the families of someone who's killed, those cases are probably the most profitable cases because they're handled on a contingency fee, a percentage of the recovery. And the way that that works is, and we're a firm that believes that, it's 1/3 of the recovery. If the case has to be tried, it could be 40, but a lot of times we even reduce our bills to a lower percentage.
Yeah.
And if it's very serious, and this is something that I have lectured about all over, is what I have found is that a lot of lawyers out there never make it into the courtroom. They advertise, they're on radio, they're on TV, they have, you've got a phone, you've got a lawyer, and they never make it into the courtroom. And what I have found, quite frankly, is lawyers have been asked, evaluate this case, evaluate the case that you're handling. Is this the case that has liability, responsibility, where there are damages and serious damages? Okay, yes. Well, what I find is that lawyers settle their good cases and end up trying their marginal cases when it should be just the opposite. Try your good cases. That's where you're going to get a good result. The marginal ones are the ones you should settle. You want to be successful? That's what you've got to do. And that's what I think I have a reputation of, because I've had many, many multi-million-dollar verdicts. And yes, those are very profitable. But my thought to lawyers is you've got to be very careful in the cases you select and in the cases that you try. If you've got a good case and you're trying them, you will be recognized by guess who? The insurance companies who are paying out the money to have insuring the people that are being sued. And they check out the lawyers. Is this somebody who's tried any cases? What kind of cases has he tried? What are his results? Am I going to be dealing with somebody who's going to go to trial? Or do I have one of these lawyers who just sits around in his office and settles cases on the phone? Well, that's not me. I am going to be there, and I have had the opportunity to try cases outside of Maryland. And Maryland is unique, and there are not a lot of people who know this outside of the profession, but we have a cap, we have a limit on the amount of damages that you can recover for non-economic damages. That's pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, loss of consortium, which is the effect that it has on a marriage, disfigurement. That's capped at a low number.
What's that cap
And
at in Maryland?
all right. So, for example, there are two different caps. One, Ben, is a medical malpractice cap. And the most that you could get in a medical malpractice case for non-economic damages to the person who was injured, lived, and suffered, and his spouse and his kids is $1,200,000.
Wow.
You could try that case in Philadelphia, and you could get $85 million.
Wow.
Maryland is one of 4 states in the United States that has a cap. We have been working as hard as we can to try to get the cap eliminated, but the medical lobby, the insurance lobby, they're the ones that are paying a lot of money to those senators and members of the House for their campaigns, and they want caps. 4 states.
So Paul, does that translate to lower insurance costs, I would assume, in Maryland?
Sure. Because
Okay.
if they're spending
So that's
a lot
how
of
they
money on
justify. That's how the
verdicts,
senators justify it, right? Is
yeah,
they say,
they're worried
yeah,
about that.
Yeah.
46 states, Alex.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yep.
I went down to Virginia, and you may have heard about this case. This was a terrible situation involving a young woman who was on the women's lacrosse team at UVA, and her boyfriend was on the men's lacrosse team. And they hooked up, and they had a relationship, but he had a very bad problem, and he was a drinker, and it was not unusual for him to get drunk regularly. And unfortunately, they broke up. Well, fortunately, they did break up. And then he got so drunk that he broke into her room, where there were 3 separate rooms, knocked the door down, and beat her to death.
Yeah, that was.
I remember that.
Yardley Love, right?
It's Yardley Love.
Right.
And I never forget this, because she was as lovely and as nice as you could ever imagine. And her whole life was taken away. Wow. She had a mother and a sister. Her father had died of cancer. And he was charged criminally, and he didn't testify. And he was found guilty of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 23 years in prison. But that didn't eliminate what he did from a civil point of view, because if you kill somebody, you assault somebody, you harm somebody, you are liable for what you did for damages. And I went down to Charlottesville and tried that case for 2 weeks. And I'll never forget it, because I brought the door that he knocked down into the courtroom for the jury to see.
Wow.
And we had photographs that had been taken by the police. And here we were in a foreign jurisdiction, Charlottesville. And the jury was out for an hour and a half, and they rendered a $15 million verdict. Half to the sister and half to the mother. And no cap for an incident like this. I've been up in New York, and I've tried a medical malpractice case for 5 weeks up in Poughkeepsie, New York. No cap. And got the largest verdict there that they had ever had against the local hospital. So when you talk about the situation of what a lawyer does and what a lawyer can do in a particular area, the handling of serious, catastrophic cases can produce a substantial amount of money. And I have a firm with excellent lawyers. There's 6 of us here. Every one of them has at least one multi-million-dollar verdict. They're not afraid to try cases. I have 2 nurses who are here that help us with working up medical negligence cases. And it's something that if you do it right, most important thing you do is you can help people. You can help families who have really been hurt. And to me, that's the most important thing that I do.
So it sounds like you obviously enjoy that area of your practice, and that's why you're still practicing, because I assume you don't need to work anymore, right, Paul?
Well, that's true. However, I'm a believer that if you're good at something and you have a good track record and you are recognized, you're going to continue to get cases, which is the situation for me, fortunately, and regularly. And people that I went to law school with, they're up in their ages, and they would come to me and they say, Paul, what are you doing? Why haven't you retired? And I said, well, first of all, why should I retire if I haven't hit my peak yet? So as long as I've got it, I'm going to do it. And it's something that is very rewarding to do. And I think I may have mentioned to you, Ben, that I also am an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland Law School. I teach medical malpractice, claims, defenses, and litigation. I've done it for 8 years. And it's really remarkable because when I started doing the class, and they had heard about the class being done at the medical school, every year I get 3 psychiatric fellows monitoring the course. They come in and they attend all of the meetings of the school, of the class. It's a 2-hour class, 1 day a week in the fall. So I have found it to be very helpful in teaching not what you saw in the movies about the professor with his class of 65 people saying, okay, Mr. Lyons, stand up. What's the holding in this case that I told you to read? What did it hold? That's not how you teach. What you teach is something that is practical. What are the issues? What are the claims? What are the defenses? How do you go about proving it? What do you have to do to prove it? Who should you get as an expert? What kind of experts are good? What kind of experts are bad? And then I bring in a defense lawyer, because I'm a plaintiff's lawyer, and we have a little talk for 2 hours about how you go about defending a case. And I bring in a judge, and the judge talks about the kind of things that happen in the courtroom that are regular, that are, regular problems. And this is something that people can understand. And then one of the other things I do is I give a demonstration. I will give a demonstration of an opening statement in a medical malpractice case. Use the TV, PowerPoint, demonstrative evidence. How do you go about persuading people? And persuasion is a very essential element to winning the case. Your credibility is on the line all the time. So that's what I do. I enjoy it. I enjoy the teaching, enjoy the practice. I enjoy the challenge, and it has been helpful to me and to my family. My two daughters are lawyers. Um, One is actively practicing, the other one practiced for a while and then became super mom.
Now, Paul, you're hopefully you don't mind me sharing this. You're going to be 80 years old in March,
Still practicing.
still practicing,
Still
and
practicing.
and I also understand that when we talk, you're always telling me about your exercise routine in the morning. Can you share that? Because I think that's as fascinating as your law career.
Well, that is something that I think you and I both share. So here's what I do. I am on the treadmill, which I have downstairs in my basement, at 6 o'clock. And I start out at elevation 5.0 and speed 4.0. After 5 minutes, I'm at speed 4.0, but I'm at elevation 15.
Holy smokes.
And I
That's
stay
ridiculous.
on
That's
the
insane.
treadmill till I burn 600 calories. I then get off the treadmill, and of course, I've got TV there. I mean, I can still watch, Sports Center, or I can watch the Bee Gees or whatever. And I then do 500 crunches. And then I take 25-pound weights in each hand, and I do this 200 times. So that takes the whole workout takes about an hour. Then I go up and take a shower, and I get here between 7 and 7:15 in the morning. And I'm ready to go.
That's amazing.
That's
When we
And
talk about,
I will tell you both, and looking at both of you, and I know that Ben works out, and Alex, you look good. The older we get,
write that down, Ben. Write that down.
I
the
got
more
it.
important it is to work out and sweat. If you go to a cardiologist, they will tell you that. Walking is fine, sweating is better,
Right.
and it will help you live longer.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've got tremendous longevity. My mother died of cancer. Fortunately, I've been able to avoid that. And my father died of complications from surgery. But my grandfather, who immigrated to this country from Russia, was 89 years old. And when he was 88 years old, he would still climb underneath a bungalow to fix something. And he was a character. And he was a model to me of perseverance and working hard.
Well,
But that's
Paul,
my workout, and
so
it's been very helpful to me.
so Paul, we're going to go another 5 minutes or so. What I've only known this superhuman, positive, energetic guy. I played golf with you one time, and it was the fastest round of golf I ever played. It was a combination of golf and great golf,
But I would say
and aerobics at the same
he uses
time.
his time in a very, very efficient way, right? And part of that has got to be, Paul, the model that you guys use to evaluate cases is not probably just the fact that can you win the case or not. Like, how do you collect $15 million from a 19-year-old kid in Virginia, right? Like, is that part of the equation? Because
That's still going on because he comes from a very wealthy family. The interesting thing, Alex, is how do you collect $15 million? Why can he go in and file for bankruptcy? No, he cannot, because the jury made a specific finding, which we asked for, to preclude him from filing for bankruptcy. So this will be over his head for the rest of his life. And I may not be around for it, but it will be collected. I can assure you of that.
yeah, so in terms of you leveraging time, right? Like part of that has to be, when do you settle cases? When do you try cases? Obviously, if you have good case, you try them. Since we're talking about the wealth aspect and leveraging time and using your disposable income then to invest, which I assume you also do, which is maybe what
And
you
you're
were doing.
right. And
Yeah,
when you handle the big cases, you're going to spend big money
right.
on experts. That's why the number of malpractice lawyers in our state and all over have shrunk because the experts that are hired are so expensive. Now, if you want somebody good, you're going to spend money. Just had one the other day, $1,000 an hour to review records.
That's ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have here something unique. We have 2 full-time nurses who've had 30 plus years experience in looking at cases and working them up and helping us get to the main issue. Because when you try a case, the worst thing you can do is have 6 separate theories. Give me one. Give me one, maybe 2. That's all I want. And they create the records and give me a chronology of what happened and when it happened and
The efficient use of time.
ordered an MRI. Was it done on time? Was it done at all? And sometimes you find out it wasn't done. Sometimes you find out there was a delay. I just had, and this is just unbelievable, 2 cases came in literally within a 2-week period where a patient had been given 20 times the dose of morphine that he was supposed to get, and the other one 10 times the amount that he was supposed to get, or she was supposed to get. Both of them died. And when you go back and you look to see, they didn't have any training, they didn't have anybody looking over them, they didn't check the patient, and, I haven't even filed those cases yet, but what I'm going to do is put it all together with a demand and expert reports and send it to the responsible company and say, okay, here it is. We're going to move ahead unless you can sit down and get this thing resolved. And sometimes they don't. And boy, give that case to me, the jury would have a ball with that and crush them.
Paul,
So-
you also, I don't know if you can say much about it, but the ship that hit the bridge in Baltimore.
Yeah. So this was a terrible tragedy. March of 2024, a vessel that was 92,000 tons carrying 4,600 containers crashed into the Key Bridge, and it fell. On the bridge was a crew of individuals working for a company that were fixing potholes in the bridge. This was at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And they were in their cars. And when the Dolly hit, the name of the ship was the Dolly, it's from Singapore, hit the bridge, it collapsed and all of the cars went into the water. All of the bodies were eventually recovered after a long period of time. And that case is pending here in Baltimore. I represent 2 of the families who had surviving children, and also Baltimore County, which surrounds the bridge. And case is set for trial in June of 2026. And it is a very, very serious case.
Yeah. So, Paul, we teach in the wealth creation, the book Word of Wealth, and also at the Wealth Creators Institute, we talk about that wealth gets created either by way of creating scalable income, in other words, becoming an expert in an area and finding a way to scale the income to a high level, and or the acquisition of assets. Now, most people do both, right? When you have cash flow, you usually invest. But and I'm going to just ask a direct question. Would you say that your wealth was predominantly created through income scalability or through the process of investing?
Absolutely the process of investing.
Okay, interesting. I was
Without
expecting
it.
him.
As an example,
I was going to ask the same
you
question.
all know this quite well. We're dealing in today's world as the world changes, all of a sudden, we have artificial intelligence, AI, that has taken over like I have never seen before. And one of the things, fortunate enough for me to do, was to get in as an accredited investor, which you are well familiar with, and got involved in a number of the AI companies that have not come public yet, but are going to, and we know about them because in our practice of law, ChatGPT has come and helped a lot of lawyers. ChatGPT is a creation of OpenAI. OpenAI has not gone public. But if you look at the other kinds of AI companies, with chips like NVIDIA, how well they have done. You can look at the companies now where you may not even be an accredited investor, but you're still able to invest $500 or $100 in these companies before they become public, like XAI or Figure AI. All of those companies are going to be unbelievably successful, and they have grown even before, they become public because they get investors to invest a lot of money in them, and you hear the names all the time. And when they end up becoming public, it's going to be quite a thing. But that, besides AI, there are other types of investments that you can make. You go to a good person who knows what to do. You invest in something like Apple. And, Apple was way, way down. And now it's up at like $287 a share. If you get good advice from good investment people like you guys, you can do very well. And it's very important that you check out the person and what's their track record. Just like, you're checking out a lawyer, which, could be a whole separate topic we can discuss maybe at another time.
We'll cover that in
But
the
you've
next
got
podcast.
For sure.
What's that?
We'll cover that in the next
We need
podcast.
more
How to
podcasts.
check out a lawyer.
But if you get to the right people,
It's good.
like the two people that are sitting here, then you are going to be in a position where you can be very successful because they've done their homework for you and will give you good advice, as I have gotten good advice from them in the past.
All
and
right,
in the
Paul.
present.
We got 1 minute. So what's your final advice? You
Work hard, right?
yeah. What's your final words of wisdom for all the viewers out there that can learn from such a really successful human being like yourself?
Just what I think everybody would say. It's work hard, do the right thing, be fair, and particularly in the kind of work that I do, you've got to understand your client's problems and work with them to solve the problems that they have. And you can do it in a nice way, in a way that is understandable and makes sense. And those people, just like investors, will come back to you again or give your name to somebody else. You should see this person. You should see that person. They're the best.
Paul, one of the fundamentals that I've used and that we teach in From Where to Wealth, or the Wealth Creators Institute, is to be a specialist or have specialized knowledge and to become the expert. Whatever it is you're going to do, become the expert, because the only way to scale something is to really be an expert. And it sounds like that's what you've leaned on, that you've become the absolute expert as a trial lawyer or as a litigator. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. People would tell you that. And maybe in the next session we have, we'll talk about how do you go about finding that out.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely bring you back. I think we all could talk to you for about 8 more hours.
Days.
Yeah, maybe weeks.
Paul, is it okay if I only do a 12 incline versus a 15? Because a 15 is a little aggressive for me.
What's that?
Is it okay if I only do a 12 incline on the treadmill versus a 15? A 15 is a little aggressive.
12 works very well. Anything over 10 is a home run.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever
A
been
15 incline?
That's crazy.
It's
I didn't know
insane.
they went to a 15.
Well,
incline.
Most of them don't.
it's like this.
Yeah.
And you will sweat, Ben. You absolutely will sweat. And that's
15
what you've
incline's
got to
ridiculous.
do.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try that just to see if I can
Yours
actually
doesn't go to a
do it.
15.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, listen, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on our podcast today, and I think we've learned a lot.
Yeah, if you would just give us, say hi to Donald for us, if you don't mind. I assume you still talk to him pretty regularly.
No, I don't.
Okay.
All right. Well, Paul, thanks for being with us, and we'll catch you in the next podcast. I think we have 2 more hours to talk to you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All right.
Paul.
Thank you.
Great to
see you later.
see you.